Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Lee Cook, and in this presentation we're going to look at an introduction to PI planning. We'll cover what is PI planning, the benefits of PI planning, inputs and outputs of PI planning. We'll go through a standard agenda for PI planning, in which we'll run through in more detail, and at the end we'll give you some links where you can find more information. So what is PI planning? PI planning is a face-to-face, interactive and all-inclusive event which aims to align all teams working within a common group, within our organisation as a tribe, to a shared vision and business objectives. The Agile Manifesto states that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is a face-to-face conversation. PI planning is part of SAFE, the Scaled Agile Framework. We can see here from the diagram in the circled areas that PI planning happens multiple times throughout the life cycle of a product. And you can find more information at www.scaledagileparamework.com. So let's have a look at some of the benefits of PI planning. Teams united under a shared vision. So all the squads within the tribe understand the shared vision and are working towards common goals. Dependencies and risks identified up front, so that we know before we go into that program increment that we've identified all the dependencies between the squads and external dependencies, and also we've identified our risks. We'll talk about that more as we go forwards. It ensures that there is a clear, transparent and aligned business objectives. It ensures to empower teams and also encourage self-management. PI planning is fully inclusive, and we ensure that we have clear, understood and agreed plans across multiple teams. It's also easily achieved with distributed teams. There are some typical inputs and outputs of PI planning, but this shouldn't refrain you from adding your own, providing you feel they add the relevant value. Some of the typical inputs include business context, roadmap and vision, current initiatives for PI, and the architectural vision. And by the end of PI planning, we hope to have some of the following outputs: committed objectives for the PI, a squad plan overview, which aligns nicely with the tribe plan overview, dependencies and risks identified also. So let's have a look at a typical agenda as specified by the Scaled Agile Framework. This doesn't mean that you need to follow this agenda. This is just giving you some guidance on how you could potentially run your PI planning event. Scaled Agile Framework states that PI planning should take place over 2 days. Day one would typically start with business context, where a senior executive member would present to the group the business context and the larger portfolio vision. This would be followed by the roadmap and vision for that tribe, for your group. And we would assume that the product management would normally take this role. We would also have architecture vision, led by the lead architect, and development practices, which would be presented by the head of delivery. We would then have some squad preparation before lunch, so that after lunch we can go into our squad breakouts, where teams can start working on their individual plans. Before the end of the day, we would have what's known as a scrum of scrums, where all of the squads would come together to review their progress so far. They could discuss dependencies, any risks, any questions they have of each other, and during the evening and before the following day, then the leadership team can come together, review these plans, and essentially look for any adjustments they may wish to make going forward into day two. So day two starts off with exactly that, the planning adjustments. So the exec team may discuss if they've reviewed the current drafted plan and they want to make some changes, or they feel there may be some value that's maybe being missed. The teams would then go back into their breakouts and continue on with their individual plans. We would stop for lunch at the appropriate time, And then the afternoon would involve all of the teams coming together to discuss their dependencies and risks. There would be a final plan overview where every team would present their final plan to the entire tribe. And this would be closely followed by a confidence vote, where every single member of the tribe gets to vote on their level of confidence as to whether they believe that this program influence will be successful or not. And we'll talk about that more shortly. So let's dive a little deeper into each of the points on the proposed agenda. The first item that we'll look at from the proposed agenda is business context. Business context will normally be delivered to the tribe from a business owner or a senior executive within the organisation. They would go through the current state of the business, making specific mention of the long-term objectives and goals within the organisation. They would make reference to the portfolio vision and specifically look into projects and products across the whole organisation and how the products and projects that this tribe are working on impact the wider objectives and goals within the business. The objective of the business context is to give every single member in the tribe a feeling of transparency so they understand exactly what is being worked on and what the objectives of the wider organisation are. And also, and probably more importantly, inclusion. So they feel included as part of this organisation and they feel valued as an individual within this tribe. Where the business context focuses on the larger organisational objectives and goals, the roadmap and vision will typically focus on the objectives and goals of that specific tribe. This will be delivered by the product management, specifically the product manager. They would go through the product vision and identify the top objectives, initiatives, and milestones that we want to work towards achieving within the specific PI. We would also note any changes from our previous PI. That may be changes to our road mapping, to our vision, to our products, whatever they may be. Both the business context and the roadmap and vision parts of the PI planning offer a fantastic insight into answering the question, why? Also allowing any member of the tribe to directly communicate with senior members of the organisation to ask their specific questions. Next, we'll look at the architecture vision and development practices. These will be delivered by the lead architect and the head of delivery, and would focus on things such as high-level designs, development or testing practices, agile frameworks, including Scrum, Kanban, SAFe, anything that may have changed, automation, and what can we automate? Automated testing, automated deployments, DevOps and shared services, and continuous integration and continuous deployment activities that we wish to employ throughout this PI. This is also an opportunity to look back at the retrospective actions from the previous PI and identify any changes that you want to take forwards. Even though the discussion is led by the lead architect and head of delivery, this again is a great opportunity for the tribe to collaborate and to get ideas from the ground up to ensure that everybody's voice is heard and the best practices are taken going forwards. Once we've gone through those agenda points and the whole tribe have had an opportunity to collaborate with business leaders and tribe leaders on things such as business context, developments, and architectural practices, they will start to prepare for their breakouts. So they will identify a corner of the room, or they will identify a virtual room that they will go to, where they will continue on their planning within their individual squads. This is done before a well-deserved lunch break. Once all the squads have had a well-deserved lunch break, they will come back with all the information that they've received from the morning activities, and within their own workspace, whether that be a corner of the room or a virtual room, They will then go through their individual squad plans. This is where they'll identify all of the epics required to work against each initiative or objective or milestone that has been specified by the product management, and break that down into the subsequent stories, tasks, and anything required in order to be able to deliver value against the set objectives. After a few hours of each squad having time to individually create their plans, and before day one concludes, we will have what's called a scrum of scrums, where individual squad representatives will join the meeting, where they will actually present their draft plan as it stands so far. They'll also have the opportunity to discuss any dependencies, any risks, or any other information that they need to discuss with the other squads so that they can go into day two effectively ensuring that they have an adequate plan going forwards. This doesn't have to be the whole tribe present. This could just be, as I mentioned, one representative of each squad, i.e. the Scrum Master, the product owner, could be both. And if you really had some sort of development practices that you wanted to present to the other squads, you could indeed bring development representation with you. This is really an open forum and is a play by ear on how the squads feel and relevant to the information they need to convey to the other squads. Upon completion of the Scrum of Scrums, this would conclude day one. And it would also present the individual squads the opportunity to take any information they've received from the Scrum of Scrums back to their squads and make any necessary amendments. We then move into day two, and day two starts with dependencies and risks. Each squad will go through their dependencies that they've identified and also the risks that they've identified and discuss them in detail with the other squads. If we can reduce dependencies, we absolutely must make that one of our objectives for this PI planning. The less dependency, the less complexity. In relation to risks, we go through what we call roam, where we will either resolve a risk up front during PI planning, we'll own the risk, so we understand who is going to be accountable for that risk. We'll accept the risk, so we appreciate that this is a risk that we can't avoid, but actually it's something that we're prepared to accept and go along with and go ahead with the next PI. And we'll try and mitigate any risk. So we'll identify the risks that we can essentially get rid of before we even have to start the PI. Once the whole tribe have had the opportunity to look at the business context, the product roadmap and vision, the architectural and development practices, they've gone out into their breakout rooms or their breakout areas and devised their plan to effectively deliver the value that's expected them in line with the objective set and the committed objectives from each squad for this PI. They've identified the dependencies and they've identified the risk and indeed roamed those risks. The final thing that will happen in PI planning is what we call a confidence vote. So we get every member of the tribe back into the room and we do what we call a fist of 5. As you can see on the diagram in front of you, a fist would equal 0 and all 5 fingers would equal 5. We're essentially asking the question, what is the confidence that we can deliver what we're committing to within this PI? And we ask every single tribe member to get involved. So on a countdown or a virtual planning tool, we will essentially say, vote now. Each member will present a number of 0 to 5, or if they can, a fist of 5. If we have zeros, ones, or twos, and this is any individual involved in this event, then we must ask the question, why is there a lack of confidence? And address those concerns immediately before we conclude PI planning. If we have completely 3s, 4s, and or 5s, then we will say there is a general consensus. And actually, we're in a very good place to start the PI, and our PI planning can absolutely be concluded.
For more information on what we've covered today, You can visit the Scaled Agile Framework on www.scaledagileframework.com. Alternatively, you can contact us directly by visiting our website at www.ultrasource.ltd. If you want to send an email, then please feel free to email myself, and that's lee@ultrasource.ltd. Alternatively, call me on 07715 955 737. Either way is fine, and I'd be more than happy to help talk you through any of what you've covered today. Thanks.